Hello, friends. Hello, brothers. This is Justin with Masonic Improvement, bringing you the latest episode of Faces of Freemasonry. I have a special guest here I'm very excited to chat with. But before we get started, I want to go ahead and throw out my disclaimer that neither myself nor my guests represent the opinions of our lodges or grand lodges. And so the opinions are strictly our own, so don't come after us. That said, I want to introduce my guest. Brother, would you like to just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Edward Pisani Jr. I'm out of the Grand Lodge of Florida, and I'm a past master. I've been a member since 2003 in Mount Dora Lodge 238 and Landmark Lodge 383. I'm a Scottish Rite Perpetual member, York Rite member, Tall Cedar, and also a Rainbow Pledge Dad.
Man, you do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, over the years, you can cover a lot of ground.
Yeah. So what got you into the fraternity?
What got me into the fraternity was I relocated because I worked at the time for the Boy Scouts of America, and I was given a district, and it was in Northeast Lake County in Florida. And at that time, I knew no one. They're like, hey, you have to move there if you want the job. And my boss at the time literally drove with me to an apartment complex to watch me sign a lease. That was like literally one of the requirements.
Man,
And I was like,
he wasn't messing around, was he?
He wasn't, and I was not messing around either. You want to pay me? I'll rent an apartment anywhere. Hey, let's do this. I was in my 20s, so I was young, but I got in there and I knew no one in town. Like I literally joined the Rotary Club, and I got started with work, and I was working long hours, and I checked out the Masonic Lodge because it was right downtown Mount Dora, and walked up to the little porch area, sat down. Everyone got talking to each other. It was a good fit. Next thing you know, I'm a Mason.
Very cool. So you're the first in your family?
I raised my dad. So
Wow.
That was a very interesting experience. Like generally it's the opposite way around, your grandfather or your father raises you.
Mm-hmm.
Since I was the first one in my family, I raised my dad, then I gave my dad my Masonic ring. So,
Wow.
which is, yeah, that's
That is
kind of
very
cool because who really does that? It's kind of the opposite. You get your grandfather's ring or great grandfather's ring or your dad's ring.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice to give it to him. He had it resized, and so it worked out nice. It worked out real nice.
It's a very cool story. So was it something your dad had been interested in for a while, or you just kind of he saw what you're doing and wanted some of that?
Honestly, I lived the next county over, so my parents only saw me on the weekends, so they had no idea what I was really up to half the time. They just knew I was doing a lot of stuff with scouting and a lot of stuff with the community. One thing led to the other, and next thing you know, like I will come home and I'm wearing a ring, and my mom was like, "Did you get married?" And I was like, "Nope." It's a Masonic ring, and she's like, "Oh, okay." And that was 17 and a half years ago now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, either way, you committed a lot of your time. Married or not,
yeah.
you committed a lot of time.
I let my wife know. I was like, I'm really active in a fraternity called Freemasonry. I'm going to keep that up. It was little like I have a dog. I have my fraternity. I have a couple of things that I'm doing with my business. Those are like kind of what I'm bringing to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to continue doing that. She said, I'm doing like a doctorate degree and a few other things. So we kind of agreed that those were going to be our things to do. So she's very into yoga and running. And so I'm into Freemasonry.
Very cool. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good for both couples, both people in the relationship to have their own little thing.
Absolutely.
My wife has zero interest in any kind of sorority or, rainbow girls and things like that. She's just not a joiner, and, me, I love things like that. So she has her own little thing and, I do my thing. So it's very.
I'm right there with you. My wife is not much of a joiner either. So my daughter, on the other hand, is a joiner. So she's like very proud about being in the rainbow
Mm-hmm.
and all things rainbow. So there's not a minute that doesn't go by where she doesn't like kind of brag a little bit, like I'm a rainbow girl. And I was like, well, you saw a pledge. She's like, I'm a rainbow girl. I'm like, okay, right attitude.
Nice. Very
Yeah.
cool. So you've been in it for about 17 and a half years. You got me beat by 2 years, but I'm curious, and I always ask this. What have you observed in your time in Freemasonry? What would you say has been the strengths and weaknesses of the fraternity? Granted, you're in Florida and I'm in Texas, so we're gonna have a little bit different experience. but I'm just curious, generally speaking, and it's not a trick question or anything. Just what do you feel? What were your observations so far?
I love the fraternity. I think it's a great fraternity. My time as master in the lodge, I had a lot of experiences. And that year I was giving back to the fraternity because for so many years I was working a lot of hours, and then I was in the Scottish Rite, and that was my like guys' night out, to go to the Scottish Rite meeting on a evening because we had a newborn baby and diapers, and you couldn't just get out all the time. Um, I think the fraternity has a lot of positives, and there's a lot of things that we do charity wise and beyond charity, just in the fellowship, that most people are not aware of. A lot of people get caught up in the esoteric work, which is great because that's where the degrees really get engaged, but there's so much. I mean, I always say to new brothers that come in, I was like, Freemasonry is like an onion. You peel the onion back and there's another layer. You peel the onion back, there's another layer. But you know what? When you look at the inside of the leaf of the onion, there's something more there. And then when you rip apart the onion apart, the matter inside, there's something there too. And you get right down to the cells of it. There's so much in Freemasonry that you can enjoy that I just get a kick out of it. Like every few years, I join another appendant body. I wasn't one of those Masons that decided right away I'm going to join every one of them that are out there. I try to spread them out every 5 years or so I have something to look forward to, like a new carrot to get involved in. And there's a few that I'm really excited about checking out, and going through their ceremonials or the degrees. So, but yeah, I have a lot of experiences, good, bad, and indifferent. So during my year, I had some real surprises that I was not expecting to have happen. And then I had some things that kind of inspired me to do the Freemasonry Report, which is a kind of a commentary editorial about Freemasonry, where I kind of have a little fun with it. And I talk about different ideas and topics and put things out there. And my goal is to answer questions about the fraternity and do it in a different way. Do it in a way that's not so stale and plain vanilla. So recently I did Zombies versus Freemasons, and that really, it was you look at it one way and you're like, okay, he's talking about the zombie apocalypse, which is kind of fun and interesting to think about. But then when you when you rip apart the onion, he's like, oh wait, he's talking about something completely different. And when you sort of go through it and you're listening, you're like, oh, okay, and some of the brothers that respond back in the Facebook messages sort of say, oh yeah, this is stuff we learned when we were going through different things, but it's so covert. Master Mason, Entered Apprentice Mason, Fellow Craft Mason would be like, get it. Shriner, Scottish Rite, York Rite will get it, because it's more organizational in a sense, but it's such a cleverly placed set of information that if you're just listening to it just for funsies, it'll go right over your head.
So I'm curious now, since you mentioned it, I admit that I've watched several of your videos, but I started the Zombie versus Freemason, and then I saw another one, and on like the little sidebar, it's like, oh, what's this one about? And I clicked on it. So I didn't watch the full Zombie versus Freemasonry. What do you mean when you say it's there's a more covert message in the zombie message there?
Well, the underlying conversation I'm having with people, I'm talking about a commentary editorial style of Freemasonry, but then when I'm doing this, I'm putting organizational behavior, organizational structure, human dynamics in there. I don't want to give it away because it's one of those things where we could talk for 2 hours just about that one, and there's probably other questions you have for me, but it's a lot about those 3 items, like human dynamics, organizational structure, organizational behavior.
Okay, very cool. So if you haven't watched it yet, pause this video and go click on it so you know what he's talking about. I'll have to go watch it after I finish here.
And if you haven't watched Why I Left Freemasonry, your video that you did is awesome. And you have a couple other videos that are really cool too. So like I binge watch videos of other people that do Masonic channels. And I call it binge-worthy content, where I'm on the road and I'll watch 5 or 6 episodes at a time and just power through them. So it's kind of cool to be like, oh, what's he talking about? How is he looking at this? Since I really don't do a lot of esoteric stuff, I get a kick out of esoteric. The one I just binged on recently, just to give them a little shout out, was Logical Fallacies with Coach Nagy and Nick Adair.
Is that
Really, really good.
is that YouTube?
Really good stuff.
Is it a YouTube channel?
Yeah, YouTube. Two brothers. One's in Alaska, one's in Florida. Awesome dudes. Awesome
Yeah.
brothers. I'm sorry. Don't disrespect. Awesome brothers.
I follow. I've been a fan of Coach Nagy for a while, quite a while. So I didn't know he had a YouTube channel though. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about some of the rest of your videos that you put out. There's a few that I really wanted to kind of touch base with you on and elaborate a little bit.
Yeah.
The first one really that really struck me is the future of Freemasonry. And would you just
Thank you.
would you just kind of give us like a summary? What's your interpretation? Where do you see the organization going 5-10 years from now?
I think our organization is going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple different reasons why. The first reason why I think we're going to be fine is we actually have a lot of people sitting at home right now getting really bored. Yeah. And because of their boredom, they're going to start looking for something to do. And they're going to jump online. They're going to see your YouTube channel. They're going to see my YouTube channel. They're going to see so many other ones out there. They're going to see things on Facebook, on Twitter, all over the place. And they're going to say, hey, you know what? That fraternity is for me. Mm-hmm. And it's even happening. I wear my Masonic hat into the grocery store, and I've had two people in the grocery store saying, hey, how are you part of the lodge down the street? And I'm like, no, I'm one a little bit further out, but I mean, I'll be glad to take you to that lodge, introduce you to brothers. I had another one where I went to an Office Depot, and I passed his name along to 2 or 3 lodges closer to his area because I was like, where do you live? He's like, oh, I live all the way over there. And it's like, well, don't come over to like here because that's a healthy drive. Mm-hmm. Go closer over there. I think we're going to be fine because there's just an itch forming in the community to do something. And we're seeing it in what's happening societally wise with people acting out in different ways. And because of that, I think there's going to be the other swing of the pendulum where they're going to want to do something else. And Freemasonry is going to be there with open arms to say, ask us a question.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And I agree with you, especially not even the people that are just, maybe they binge watch National Treasure over the 6-month, quarantine or anything. But, you also got the people that have always been kind of thinking about it, and so they're sitting around and they're thinking about it more. And you see that a lot. Yeah. where people, like you're describing, people kind of are unable to get out, and they start craving, fraternity, brotherhood, fellowship. And so that's part of the reason you see people in the military. You see a high percentage of veterans and Masonic lodges also, is because they get out and they're like, well, I want some kind of fellowship. And so I could definitely see that being a thing. So, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. The other thing I want to add into the conversation about the future of Freemasonry that's important to be aware of, if you look at the membership statistics prior to the baby boom, we were about equal to where we are now, give or take. So we're bringing new brothers in, mm-hmm. and because of that, we're actually doing okay. I think what we're dealing right now is we're having a resource analysis, reallocation, whatever word you want to tie around with it. But we had such a population boom in the Brotherhood that now we have resources not being utilized, and it's sort of saying, okay, let's merge them, let's get rid of them, let's change direction a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that's healthy, like to sort of say, we don't need to have so much resources if we don't have that population, because our main goal is to serve the fraternity. Yeah. If we have 100 brothers or 100 million brothers, our goal is to serve the fraternity, and that's how it is. I think there's too many people getting caught up into the hysteria of like our membership is declining, which is just a normal progression. Mm-hmm. Like there are good people that are just going to pass away. Like you can't stop someone from passing away. The second we could stop people from dying, then there'll be no excuse to ever leave Freemasonry, in my opinion.
So you said something that really struck with me on that. You know, when you said that our membership is about what it was prior to the baby boomers come along. And that really struck with me because I always believe everything is cyclical in nature. You know, everything follows patterns, right? And we're pretty much set up to have a baby boom come, you know, next. I mean, all joking aside, you know, you got the quarantines, you know, what they'll be called when they grow older. But there's going to be a big baby boom. I mean, you're not going to sit home, you know, months at a time and not find something to do, right? So
yeah,
it's, we're at that point where we were prior to the baby boom, and it's reasonably to anticipate there'll probably be another boom sometime in the upcoming year or two.
yeah, and I'm certain that our top level leadership in the shrine, the Grand Lodges, the pendant bodies of rights, all have the birth rates. They're looking at the death rates. They're looking at where there are more men versus more women, where they should see a 2 or 10% increase over the course of time. Those are just basic blocking and tackling. And I strongly believe they are doing things along those lines. I can't guarantee it because I'm not on any national board or international board. So that's just my speculation based upon their actions that they've done in the last 10 months or so with setting up their recruitment and promotion to get more people interested in everything.
So do you kind of, if I'm making assumptions based on what you said, you know, feel free to correct me, but do you kind of feel as though all this fear, because there's a lot of fear associated with the membership numbers right now. There's a lot of hand wringing going on, you know, a lot of concerns. Do you feel as though that might be kind of overblown?
I think depending upon where you're sitting, and a person that's looking at the budgets and saying, okay, last year we had this many brothers to cover our budget. Now we have this many brothers covering our budget. I know a lot of brothers that are listening to this right now are probably like heads are exploding because they never want to look at fraternity in the numbers. They just want to look at it in the perspective of this is a good, wholesome, esoteric fellowship. But at the end of the day, like, we need to plan and we need to know how we're going to have our resources and use our resources. And I think the strongest bodies across the country will sort of say, okay, we just got to scale back what we're doing and try to find new ways of doing things. And we don't need as much resources because we don't have as many brothers, and we can now put our attention at different things. I don't know if the fear is something that's going to be long lived. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have brothers going to come in. And I did a recent video on like the types of Masons you'll find in Freemasonry. That was one of my
bullet point for that.
But my point with what you just made is like there's one of them where it's called mountain climbers. A mountain climber will take the data and he'll be like, look, the data invited me to do this because of these resources. And the data invited me to make these decisions based upon the resources and the direction our fraternity is going. And a lot of brothers would be like, again, losing their minds because, you know, they don't want to talk data. They don't want to talk statistics. They don't want to talk analytics. They just look at something how much fellowship do I have in this pot? My pot's kind of low. I'm kind of scared.
It's an emotional perspective. They look at it from like emotional. And then you got this other side that's looking at it numerically, you know, logically. And that's where a lot of this disconnect is, I think, like you're talking about, where they're, you know, I've you know, it makes me feel good to be here. I don't want to discuss anything that's going to make anybody unhappy, right? That might be uncomfortable. You got the logical side here, you know, the numbers, like, look, guys, these numbers, it doesn't matter how you feel about it. The numbers don't lie. And I think not to kind of, you know, or, you know, jump on what you're saying, but I think that prior, even as recently as maybe 15 or 20 years ago, a majority of the brothers were probably a lot more, it might be just a generational difference. They're a lot more emotionally biased towards decision making, wherein now you got, you know, a lot of brothers that are coming in, and I don't know why there's suddenly be this increase, but it's like like the logical side, like the numeric perspective that you're talking about. They're coming in and then they're looking at the minutes like, what have you guys been doing all this time? How are the doors still open?
It's amazing, and like I truly believe that there will be some merging and things that happen, but I think it's healthy. I think the concept of the Masonic Center, where there's more than one Blue Lodge meeting in one building, makes a lot of sense, and I think Freemasonry has a very bright future because I think we're expanding our minds because of COVID and saying like, you know what, whoa, there's a lot of different ways we can deal with this, and there's a lot of new avenues that are opening up, and it's kind of cool. Like it's always interesting to sort of see what the future brings. I've been a Mason now for 17 years, and you've been a Mason for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're both young guys. 25 years from now, there's Freemasonry's landscape is going to look different than it does today, but the core values are not going to change. The ritual's not going to change. Maybe the location of the building we're utilizing may change, and how some of the finer points, if like you have a scan card to get in to make sure your dues are paid, or if they're doing something else that might be a little bit different where you're like, oh, we never had the Tyler scan a card to make sure we're up to date on dues. Like I could see in 25 years from now, that might just be like a normal thing every Grand Lodge does across the country. And there's probably in 25 years from now, an easier database where they say, okay, brother so-and-so is going from Alaska to California. Let's welcome him. And we have a plan of action in the Scottish Rite, York Rite, Shrine, Blue Lodge level to get him engaged almost instantaneously and give him like instantaneous connections to get boots on the ground day one when he gets into the community. I think that's what the future is going to look like.
So this will probably come across as kind of controversial to some brothers. But I have a strong feeling, and you can agree or disagree, but I have a strong feeling that Freemasonry is going to change more in the next 25 years than it did probably in the last 100 years, if not more. It's just everything seems to be, change isn't necessarily good. Change for the sake of change isn't a good thing, but everything is moving along so fast from a technological perspective, kind of like what you're talking about, the key cards and things, where if we don't kind of get on board with technology, then we're gonna have some, like you say. I also believe that Freemasonry has a good future ahead of itself. I believe that
Mm-hmm.
we're not going anywhere, but if we can't kind of get with the times as far as technology and things like that, then we're gonna get left in the dust.
Well, I kind of look at it from a different perspective, and I talked to a lot of my friends in Freemasonry, even my dad. I was like, a lot of people on the Grand Lodge have been active for a significant period of time, and a lot of changes they want to see come about are now getting implemented. I really feel bad for all the Grand Lodge leaders across the country, across the world, with this COVID-19 crisis going on, and the Blue Lodges, because there's people who've been waiting years and decades to sit in certain roles to get certain things achieved, and now because of that, it's been affected. But I truly believe like there's brothers that are going to listen to this video today that are our age or possibly younger. That's the next Grand Master down the road that's going to say, I have the solution. These are solutions out there. I mean, like there's games right now you can have on your Android or Apple phone where you can clearly communicate with someone on the other side of the world and it instantaneously translates something for you.
Mm-hmm.
How long will it take before a Grand Lodge leader says, we need that? And who is it going to be? And who's the first brother in the first Grand Lodge or in the first dependent body that's going to say, we're doing it? Everyone else is like, ooh, shiny, we're doing that too.
Yeah. And it just takes those leaders, people to step up and push for that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. We're gonna be seeing things like that. I mean, we kind of have to, when you mentioned earlier, how membership was before the baby boom, I was wondering, I don't have any evidence of it or not, but I was wondering if the brothers at the time were kind of antsy about the membership as well, because if they were, there's not, to my knowledge, any real indication of them doing anything drastic to correct it. You know what I mean? As far as, well, make the dues cheaper, or let's make it easier for people to get in, lower that barrier to entry or anything. So if there was that concern, we still didn't see anything drastically change. And so, where we are now, there's that concern, and some lodges are kind of taking some actions. Every jurisdiction is doing their own different thing, but some of them are trying things a little more intuitive, not intuitive, a little more innovative, to try and to get more people in. So change is good, change is necessary, but change for the sake of change, I guess that's where I'm going with it, isn't always for the best. But it is good that we're in an organization that allows for, I guess you could say, experimentation with new ideas. So hopefully moving forward.
Yeah, I have a couple of videos and a couple of blog articles where I talk about planning,
Mm-hmm.
and this really comes down to smart planning. And if there's a lodge that's out there, they say we have 100 brothers in our lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Is it realistic that 5 are going to move away, 5 are possibly going to pass away? Maybe. If that's the case, well, that's about 10% of your population in your lodge. So you need to have a plan in place to replace that, plus maybe a 2 to 5% growth. So what they need to do is say, we want to plan for 12 to 15 new members to come in, because they're possibly going to lose 5 to 10 new 5 members that we currently have to attrition, death, or whatever. So with that smart planning, and with them thinking, okay, what do I need to do this month, this meeting, this year? What do we have to plan for? And then worst case scenario is you don't have a 10% decrease, and maybe it's only a 2% decrease. Well, you plan to get 15 new members. I know word recruitment is so taboo, but if they have a plan in place to promote the lodge, that will again address that issue, and then they'll start having plus grain years, and then this whole thing will go away. But again, nobody wants to plan. Nobody wants to look at the brotherhood as numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why the Freemasonry report does things in a more commentary editorial way, because I'm trying to take really aggressive ideas and put them away where you look at them and say, oh, that's kind of a silly video. What's that about? And then maybe some of it might stick a little, and you're like, oh, that's a good idea.
So that's part of the reason I reached out to you, is I noticed, well, first of all, I like your content. I think you do really good. You have some really good content, and you have really nice intro and all kinds of fancy stuff that I don't. But some of the stuff that you post kind of, I feel as though it correlates with some of the content I put out, and that you seem to take a more business-like approach to the fraternity.
Yeah.
And I'm a rural lodge. I'm in rural Texas. I don't know how big your population is, but it's always been my experience that we do the opposite, kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's more emotional, and it's things happen to the lodge. You know what I mean? They're more reactive to things instead of looking at data and anticipating, and crunching numbers and things. And I know that kind of takes the fun out of it for some people, but you don't have to be that person. If you don't want to look at the numbers, don't look at the numbers. But don't also, by that same token, don't resist the people that do look at the numbers. If someone comes and gives you a presentation saying, look, based off our dues amount right now and what we're costing to run the building a year, and how much we're making off whatever outside stuff we do, this is probably what dues need to be. You can't get all emotional about that, because if you don't want to do the numbers, that's fine. But you also have to be respectful of the people that are willing, because a lot of people don't like math. I get that. But when the numbers are there,
boring. It's a two-sided situation, because we have brothers that have full-time jobs during the course of the day, and this is not work time. This is me just like cutting up and having a good time and just relaxing, and maybe kicking some stones in a parking lot or whatever. And they don't want to look at the data. They don't want to look at the boring stuff. They literally say, I'm going to step in, I'm going to look at the esoteric, and I'm going to deep dive that baby. Or they're going to say, I'm here for the fellowship, and watch out, we're going to have some fun. Or we're going to do some charity work, because you know what, this isn't business, and there's no TPS spreadsheet, as they said from Office Space. And like if you have not watched the movie, anyone listening, like go watch Office Space. Pause the video, come back.
Pause it right now, go watch it. You owe it to yourself.
Yeah. Yes. But I mean, like, we have to keep in mind that we need to make it a little bit business oriented, and that's kind of the goal of my videos. Is like when I did the pseudoscience series, it was more about human dynamics and finding a place in the lodge and sort of looking at it. How do you interact with other people in the lodge? So I put it in a context that would be interesting to someone, versus just sort of saying, I'm talking about human dynamics in Freemasonry, which is like, are you going to click on that video? Probably not.
Well, based on some of the stuff I made like that, probably not. If I look at like stuff I made like that, it's like, yeah, I don't want to click that.
And I do some stuff. I do some challenges where I do a part 1, part 2, and like promote your lodge. I did a video on that. And then I did another one, the mistakes brothers make. I had 100 times more interactivity with the mistakes brothers make. And all it was the same content with a different title. And all of a sudden, like, it had 100% more interest. People don't like boring. People like interesting. So I just kind of, I don't want to bang the drum too much, but
I think that ties back what you're talking about is it's also kind of, you mentioned earlier that there's all kinds of different, Freemasonry is like an onion, and really it's like a field just full of rabbit holes. I mean, you could, and the more bodies you join, the more rabbit holes there are, right? But it's some people will say, the fellowship's what it's about, or some people will say, well, the esoteric stuff's what it's about, or some people say, well, I really just like the degrees, and really none of them are wrong. They're all right, but if someone wants to focus on putting together a degree team, who am I to bash on that, right? If someone wants to bring their business expertise to the organization and look at the books that no one's looked at in 30 years, that's not wrong either. But we need to make room for everybody that has different, different. I guess what I'm saying is the beauty of an organization like ours is it brings people from different backgrounds and different experiences, and there's room for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
And we need to, when people are doing whatever it is they do best and they try to bring that to the fraternity, we need to be accepting of that and appreciative of that, instead of saying, well, that's not the way, we've always done that, or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's true. My lodge mentor told me when I was a 20-something young man, and I was going through learning the work, because we do it slow track here in Florida. So you have to, it's not like one-day courses or anything. Like I was at one of these learning sessions in the afternoon. He's like, Ed, you have to be aware that we have brothers from all walks of life, and you need to embrace that. You're going to have a railroad worker to a president of a company sitting at the same table having dinner, and you need to be cool with that. And I was like, okay, because I was young and impressionable. I was like, all right, sounds good, Jim. But he had a wealth of experience, and I'm glad that in a way he shared that with me, and it kind of complements what you're saying as well, because everyone comes in with a different talent. One person might be able to change a toilet, and another person might be able to balance the checkbook in QuickBooks. Both of those brothers are critically important to our lodge functioning.
Yeah.
One brother might be able to say, I can organize a parade. Another brother could say, I can run and buy the candy for Halloween to give out to the kids. Both of those brothers are critically important.
Absolutely. So there's I don't know really what order I want to tackle this, but there's 3 videos that you put out, and I didn't see too much controversy in the comments, but at least not on YouTube, but on some of the Facebook comments, people got a little they're a little I don't know, really, I guess, upset about it. But you made 3 videos, Alpha, Beta, and Sigma males in the fraternity, right? And
I have more. I try not to have them back to back to back. I have a few more. A little spoiler alert. It's not over, so you could get ready to get hot caught under the hat, I guess. But like, yeah, I have a few more because there's a few more human dynamic perspectives I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using the pseudoscience theory to really address it in a fun way. And I love reading the feedback from the brothers, because when the brothers are on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever, sort of sharing and talking, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
When you're reading a newspaper, you have the person that's a columnist. He says things in an opinionated way because he wants you to think about it and talk about it. You might not agree with him, or you might agree with him,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start talking to other people about it, and now there's discourse going. One of the grandmasters in Florida did a series and wrote a book called Discourse, and he really deep dived into a topic, and his sharing every month with the craft of the entire state, and I loved it. And kudos to him for doing so. This is just more of a quick snippet of not so deep dive, but getting that conversation going. And it's good to not agree with me. I don't want everyone to agree with me. You're a brother. You're an equal on the level with me. You should be able to say, I disagree with you respectfully, my brother. And I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
The only time I kind of feel a little bit disappointed is when a brother sort of uses foul language or does something demeaning. And I'm like, don't demean each other. Don't use foul language. Just, be on the level.
Yeah. Well, some people get defensive sometimes, but I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, the video of mine that you discussed earlier, the why I left Freemasonry, that's obviously kind of a controversial title. I'm obviously, still a Mason, right? But
Yeah.
but they got people to click it. I mean, people are like, well, this is a clickbait title. Well, you watched it, right? And now we're having a discussion. And so it's the same mentality. I mean, sometimes we have to talk about things, and sometimes we have to bring it up in a way that may seem controversial just because you're not going to talk about it otherwise. And we as an organization do a terrific job of sweeping things under the rug and ignoring it and not discussing it. It's phenomenal how good we are at that. I mean, it's not a good thing that we can do it, but we are really, really good at it.
It's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because I did another video. You might have it on your checklist. That's So Masonic. I don't know if that's one of them or not, but it goes a little bit into like that idea of how we need to be men of honor, and how like certain things would not make us honorable.
I saw that, but I didn't click it yet. It's on my to watch list. I haven't binged it yet, but
Thank you. It's all good. We both have journeys.
Yeah.
I love watching your videos, and I love seeing your journey. I think it's so cool. Sometimes I've watched your videos more than once. And so just kudos to you for doing a good video. I really enjoy it. So keep them up.
Well, I appreciate that. So something I was going to ask you, by the way, before I get sidetracked. So if you are watching this and you have not watched his little series on Alpha, Beta, Sigma males, I mean, there's obviously more coming out, but watch them all three, get triggered, have a conversation about it, because he brings up some very valid points, and basically there's room for everybody. He's not saying that there's not room for any specific type of male unless you're just a jerk, but everyone has their own strengths and their own weaknesses that they bring to the table, and we all complement each other. Check it out. It's great stuff.
Thank you.
So obviously you and I kind of have something in common in that we kind of made the jump from just head first into YouTube. And so I know not all my videos, but I get some kickback, not necessarily just from brothers, but the non-members also, who always think they know more than the members themselves, but that's a whole other topic. But I was curious, like, how much did you get much pushback from fellow brothers, like in your content, like, for bringing things up? Because I've had people even ask me, please take this down. No one needs to know that we have this problem. No one needs to know that this is a conversation we're having.
I had the sitting Grand Master this past month basically say, hey, Ed, your music is a little off. So I know the Grand Line is watching my videos.
It's kind of scary, right?
Which is kind of, it's cool. I love it. I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, what other grandmasters? Check in. Let me know. I think it's amazing. You want me to talk about something? Let me know. I'll bring it up. Um, but like, I, I, I don't have a problem with that. I think I have more of an issue with the Illuminati running around with a WhatsApp telephone number. You can make $100 million. I really dislike that
Mhm.
more than anything else because it's such a negative tarnish on a great organization. I don't appreciate that. I joined some Freemason labeled groups on Facebook, and some of them were like loaded with Illuminatis,
Mhm.
where they were not the real like Freemason, but they were just sort of like, this is how you set up your WhatsApp account and blah 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 blah. And I was like, I left instantaneously, but I was like,
Yeah.
that's not cool. That's not a great representation of us at all.
Mhm.
I'm more frustrated with that than the brothers communicating. If a brother doesn't like my opinion and an admin of a group doesn't like my opinion, there's their right to say, hey, you know what? We're going to talk to you about it, or we're just not going to post it today. And it's like, all right, that's your call. And like, I know I do have very straightforward, broad statements on my video titles,
Mhm.
and that's fine. Um, but I don't ever get frustrated about it. I mean, this is something that's a low passion project for me. I've not yet made any money, and I put money out, but that's not my goal. My goal is not to be rolling in the cash flow and trying to make it like a full-time job. My goal is to be like, hey, I love being a Freemason, and I'm gonna talk about Freemasonry.
Yeah.
And if that bothers you, there's two things you can do. You can listen to me, or you could choose not to listen to me. I'm still a Freemason. I'm on the level. And if you really, really hate me, bring me up on charges. Go
Mhm.
for it.
Yeah.
And
You got
you
threatened with
better
charges.
win. you better win, because if you don't, it's going to be a sad day for you.
Yeah.
Um, so like that's the unfortunate truth. I mean, I don't worry about it. I love all my brothers, um, even the ones I've never met before, because I think they're really good people,
Mhm.
and I look forward to having conversations with a lot of them. And I respect all of them. Anyone that replies, I give a lot of respect to, even if they disagree with me, even if they're frustrated at me. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm not, don't have a problem with that, because I mean, they could be frustrated at me if they're sitting in my own lodge and make a comfort controversial. There we go. Controversial um, uh, vote. Like if I stand up and say, you know what we need to do? We need to tear down this building to the studs and get rid of all the like mice, and let's rebuild the building. There's people are gonna like think I'm crazy and not like me too much
Mhm.
after standing up and saying that. Not like it ever would, because I have a good lodge, but just a what if scenario. Um, and that's fine. That's part of our fraternity. We can agree to disagree and still be brothers.
Isn't it? So I don't know. I don't know. I've never been to Florida, but here in Texas, we often have newer lodge buildings. I say newer, like built in the 50s, uh, right beside the old lodge building. And there's always such a sharp contrast. The older buildings are usually nicer, they're more regal looking. And then,
Hmm.
somewhere in the 50s or 60s, they usually rebuild it, and it's just like a square building. I mean, the one I joined, I was raised in originally. For years, I just thought it was a warehouse on the corner. There was nothing really on the outside. Other people thought the same thing. They're like, "Oh, there's a lodge there, okay." And the one I'm in now it's nicer, but the one I moved my membership 3 times just because I moved and changed jobs and things. And the one before that, I mean, it was just a square nondescript building also. And my point is, it's sad. We went for some grand buildings, and we went to something much more. If it was a flavor, it'd be vanilla. It's just plain Jane, buildings. And the newer stuff, a lot of lodges are building is, I mean, it's just like your prefabricated metal structures and stuff. I mean, it's nothing. I feel as though as more time goes by, our buildings are, for something that takes such a huge uh, inspiration from architecture and things like that to move to like metal prefab buildings. It's kind of makes me sad, because at one point we thought enough of our organization to make really nice structures, that really, they spoke volumes about what we thought about our organization. And now, it's just whatever we can build as cheap as possible.
Uh, and I think that goes back to the resources conversation, because when you step back and you say, okay, during the time where you had these massive buildings, you had thousands and thousands of brothers paying dues. Now you have hundreds and hundreds of brothers. So the resources it takes to keep up a building like that needs to be considered. I think going to a smaller size building is not a bad decision. I think architectural wise, there could be conversations had where you could dress up the outside of the building much nicer. But I know in some cases, like it's actually a good decision to say, let's get out from something that's costing us so much money to get into something that's actually of quality. Now, cheap materials, that comes down to the lodge. And again, that comes down to planning. If you have a plan and you have like a strategy, you're going to handle things, that's not too much of an issue. I know I'm sort of like banging the drum, but watch the video, plan your month on my channel.
I feel as though a lot of the issue is you have lodges that have not just not planned their month, but they haven't planned their month for decades. And so there's a few lodges I've been to personally, and not only is the building in terrible shape, I mean it's falling down, and the lodge doesn't have they don't have the budget to fix it, let alone build a new one. They don't have the budget for that, and they barely have enough people showing up. Because here in Texas you can have joint membership to more than one lodge, right? And so you have the same number of brothers that just visit all the lodges, and they're retired, they have joint membership everywhere, and they're the ones that are keeping these organizations open. The building, I mean, these are buildings that need to have that merged conversation where they need to consolidate with a larger lodge. And I feel as though a lot of us look at that like a failure on our part when a lodge has to merge. But if you look at the records, like there used to be significantly more lodges in this county and in this district when, before automobiles were commonplace, before the roads were very nice, all these small little hole in the side, these little spots on the side of the road that used to be communities, they used to have lodges. And then when the world got a little smaller, they consolidated, and the bigger lodges stayed behind. But they're at a point now where they need to have that conversation too.
Yeah, I think you're on to something there. I kind of look at it as being like when you look at some of these lodges that are in trouble, I call it basic blocking and tackling, and that's a football term. Like, are they doing the basic blocking and tackling? Is their treasurer trained? Do they go to the Grand Lodge training the treasurers have? Did the secretary get trained? Did the top level leadership get trained and understand their functions correctly? So when you look at the basic blocking and tackling, and can you say that they check all those boxes? And a lot of Grand Lodges have district deputies that run around that have like checklists, and they have things that you need to do. And again, it comes down to talent and resources. Like just because you want to have the title of an officer, is that the right role for you? I always like to tell brothers that I meet, the two most important things you can do as a new brother in this lodge in Florida is, one, obviously learn the degree work, but two, stay in your lane and read the Grand Lodge Charter, Constitution, Digest, bylaws, whatever you call it in Texas, and know it. Because if you stay in your lane, you're like, I'm really good at ritual work, be the best brother for ritual work we can have. Put on the best degrees we possibly can have. If you're really, really good at administrative, be the best brother administratively we can have. Be that best secretary you can have. Don't take the secretary job because you were a very, very good lodge leader. Stay in that leadership track. Be a good leader for our lodges. But don't say, okay, you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to jump over here into something, destroy my credibility, not do a good job, mess things up, possibly have implications for our local lodge because I stepped out of my thing that I'm really good at. And it's kind of like a book, Good to Great. You just focus on what you're good at and stick at it. In our fraternity, just do the same thing. Just if you're good at doing degrees, do amazing degrees. Be a ceremonial person that like plans it out and gets it all together, and like put on degrees that are, I call them like fast food degrees, where they're just trying to throw them together,
Hmm.
but kind of really have them well thought out, well planned out, and then have someone that's sort of like, hey, I'm an accountant, I'm an attorney, I'm a business owner of some capacity, or a business professional, or I'm a principal of elementary school, I'm a bookkeeper of an elementary school. Have that person maybe do some of the administrative work because they're just naturally more capable of doing it. And sometimes the business owners are not. And
Yeah,
sometimes some of those other people are not. But to find their space where they fit, and that makes sense.
I agree 100%. It's very
So
good.
it's basic blocking and tackling.
I like that analogy. That's yeah. And really, I mean, you would not elect anybody to the Grand Lodge lineup for secretary if they had no administrative experience. You wouldn't elect them to treasurer if they just declared
No,
bankruptcy 6 months ago, right? So
no,
why would you elect these same people in your lodge positions?
exactly. It's kind of like saying, okay, we're going to have a middle school football team go against an NFL pro team. You know what's going to happen? That middle school team is going to get crushed
Yeah.
because you're going against people that are specialists and experts in their given area because they're staying in their lane. They're saying, you know what? I'm a tight end. I'm going to be the best tight end I can be. I'm
Hmm.
a quarterback. I'm going to be the best quarterback I can be. I'm a kicker. All I do is kick.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that catches the ball, the kick, for like whoever. I'm going to be best at that. Where like the middle school kids are like, okay, we're here to have fun and we're going to cut up, but they're not committing better part of 10, 15 years to get to that pro level.
Yeah.
And we just need to be the same way. Do we have to be pros? No, but we can think like pros.
Hmm. Yeah.
Be that
And
star
that's
athlete.
yeah. So while we're still talking about the lodge best practices and things like that, I I admit that I didn't have the opportunity to watch this particular video, but did want your input on this because it's something I have talked about at length. So I was curious what your thoughts were. You have a video about I can't remember the title of it, but you're talking about the minutes in your lodge. So I was
Okay.
curious are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Somewhat. I've done like 30 plus videos now. So,
Well,
like, yeah, like a bit, possibly like
well,
could you
just
elaborate a little bit on it?
sure. I guess what I want to know is just in general, what is your approach to approving the way minutes are read at your lodge meeting?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was time management. That was the concept of that video.
Okay.
Again, organizational structure and organizational behavior, time management, leadership. Um, my concept there was there's different ways you can handle that. Like depending upon what your Grand Lodge allows you to do, think outside the box. Get the brothers motivated and activated. Think about it from a leadership perspective. How can I make this more enjoyable?
Mhm.
One example would be if you can read the minutes at the end of your meeting, so you don't have to bog the beginning of the next meeting with it, and you're allowed to do that in your Grand Lodge jurisdiction, consider doing that because some of the older members are going to leave early anyway if they know they're going to hear everything they just went through. And in some cases, by doing it that way, if there's a mistake, you're catching it that night, then you can send it off to whatever authority needs to put a rubber stamp on it and have it for their records.
Mhm.
But there's different ways you can handle things. And that was a concept of like time management. How can you be a time manager? And it's sort of like what I always say, like, you want to be the manager of other people, you want to be the leader of other people, you have to first lead yourself, you have to first manage yourself. If you can do that, you can manage your own time, then you can manage other people's time. And
Mhm.
of course, we're living in a little bit of a box of what the Grand Lodge says we're allowed to do in their constitution, bylaws, or digest, or whatever it's called in your jurisdiction. But as long as you live within inside of that, and the craft says, hey, that's not a bad idea, let's give it a whirl, maybe we'll have more attendance for the beginning of the meeting. Great. There's nothing even saying like with meeting management, if you say, okay, we're going to do something, take a break, we're all going to have a cup of coffee and get back together. We're going to do something, take a break and do a breakout session and talk about things. We're going to do something and we're going to switch it up. The master of the lodge is the master of the lodge. The only person that can reprimand him is the district deputy and the grand master.
Mhm.
So he has a little bit of latitude. And if a brother is thinking now, if he's like, hey, I'm senior deacon and I got 3 or 4 years out before I'm sitting in the East, what can I do that's dynamic now. I recommend anyone's listening, write a manifesto of like all the things you want to do, and start putting that on paper so you can start hitting your punch list out of the gate versus saying, okay, I'm writing my manifesto, I just got elected into the East. It's too late. You have to do that years ahead of time, months ahead of time.
Yeah, man. So I just imagine my wife coming in. That's what I'm doing. I'm typing my manifesto. Leave me alone. Yeah, but I
You could
like
edit
that.
it. Tell me what you think. It's like, what's a cipher?
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right on with as far as planning far ahead. You know, the senior warden, at least here in Texas, you know, it's a pretty when you compare it like the junior warden, the senior warden doesn't really have a whole lot of responsibilities. And the reason for that is because you're supposed to be looking ahead, supposed to be looking east, you know, planning ahead for that. But so many brothers do exactly what you're saying. They get in the east, and then they're just there. They're like, I don't know what to do. You know, I don't know what I need to do. Well, you should have had that planned ahead. You need to have, set at least. I always say set one goal. What do you want to accomplish that year? Set one thing you want to get done that's most important to you, and just push for it. You know, that's your thing that year.
Yeah. I mean, even the most basic thing, I would say what makes sense is to get together with the grand line of the upcoming Grand Master and saying, hey, what is your theme for your upcoming year? I want to mirror it in my lodge, and have a similar conversation going, communication style going that complements your communication style. Have that conversation, get aligned with them. Look at it as organizational stakeholders in being like a project manager as a PMP would. What could you do to check those boxes? Find out who possibly could be appointed as district deputy. Get on the same page with him. So you have a good start. Have conversations with your potential officers. Get those people started engaged. Have it's just and then training. Like, what training can you get? What training is available? Because you have the esoteric side of things, which is amazing, but then you have the leadership organizational side of things, which is equally amazing. If we can come up with just a blockbuster, in the Boy Scouts they call it wood badge. If we had a wood badge for Freemasons, that would be outstanding, because then we're giving them the tools to really be hyper successful in the Grand Lodge. And maybe that's more of a conversation where all the Grand Masters get together and say, hey, we're going to really go big time with this. And anyway, I digress. Spitballing, wishful thinking.
I think ego gets in the way of that too much, but I agree with you. I think every, not necessarily the Grand Master, because Grand Master would love to have everybody on board, but every senior warden, every district deputy, every marshal master, every grand senior warden, they all have their thing that they want to probably push, their year when they're in the East or something. And they want their year to be successful. So they don't necessarily always want to collaborate. I think, they don't want to, because really the ideal program would have some kind of retention over the years. You get everybody on board. Hey, this is the program, because you see it every year. You get a new Grand Master. It's like, hey, this is my theme. This is what we're going to do, and it's nothing to do with the last one, and it's nothing to do with the one that's coming up. It's just my thing for this one year. And so it's just at that point, just after you've been doing it 17 or 15 years, you just know it's just going to be something different, and it's not really going to make any difference. But if you could have not only from a top down level, everybody on the same page, but if you could have some consistency, look, they're like the Grand Master, Grand Senior Warden, Grand Junior Warden, Grand it's like some jurisdictions have the like Deputy Grand Master. If everyone's on the same page, you got something you can actually.
It makes sense. I mean, like, in that alignment goes down to like where the Worship Master talks with the Grand Master, the Senior Warden talks with maybe the Deputy Grand Master, Senior Warden, Junior Warden talks to the Junior Grand Warden or Senior Grand Warden, depending upon how the line is broken up, and have all of them having a conversation years out ahead of time. Because most times you don't have a surprise at the end of the year saying we're going to have this person come in and be in the East. It's pretty much people know, like, you're going through the line, you're working hard, we respect you, you're going to do this job. If you don't, you probably don't make it past a certain point anyway. But to have that conversation started early, now you're giving everyone a head start. I look at Freemasonry as a book, and every year we have a chapter of the book. My chapter of my Worship Master year was 2018. That's over. My year's over. That chapter's ended. There's a new chapter this year, 2019. And, there'll be another chapter afterwards. But you look about it, every year there should be a new chapter, there should be new ideas. People should be challenging things and saying, you know, Ed, you're really excited about this project. Or Justin, you're really excited about this project when you're in the East, but we don't care about it. We're going to put that on the back burner. Okay, I had my turn. Now it's your turn. You do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. So it's all about alignment, and it sounds easy, but it's not. It's very complex to pull off correctly, and you need to have a lot of strong minds get together and say, we're going to sit in a room for hours on end, hammer it out so we can make it look easy for the rest of the craft.
Unfortunately, I think that's why it hasn't really been done with great fidelity in most places, is because it's not easy. And, you know, we as human beings, we often go for the low hanging fruit. You know, what's easiest? Well, easiest thing is just kind of wing it. You know, I'll plan my thing and do my thing. But not really, because you're right. You're talking about getting together with people and really hashing it out. You know, ideally, the worship master should get with the wardens at least once a year and kind of get on the same page about everything. But yeah, it often doesn't happen. And I really can see the value in what you're talking about. If your jurisdiction has leadership schools for like the wardens, you know, and so like here in Texas, we have a warden leadership school. I don't know if the senior and junior warden schools are separate or not. I admit that I have not gone, but and this might actually be the case, but I don't know that it is. But say like if the senior warden, the grand senior warden said, look, this is kind of the curriculum for this workshop. This is what my goal, where our focus is going to be when I'm, in the Grand East. So I want all current senior wardens to hopefully kind of get on the same page, because moving forward, this is what you can expect next year. And the same thing with the junior warden too. And again, you have the grand officers also collaborating with each other. So, the senior warden's vision isn't so far off and radically different from the sitting grand master or the junior wardens, but, just kind of move everyone together in the same direction.
Cool. Yeah. It's something maybe someone that's listening today might down the line and say, you know what, we have to do that. And maybe we're inspiring the two of us in our conversation here over a Zoom meeting that's going to be put onto YouTube and some other places to inspire someone in 5-10 years from now to say, you know what, I'm gonna do that. Mm-hmm. And that'd be cool.
Hopefully someone gets something out of all the stuff I put on. That's always been my goal. Maybe out of all the videos I make and all the blogs I write, that one day, one thing I'll write, maybe one sentence I type will come across and have some kind of positive impact, So
yeah.
That being said, we've been at it almost an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time and everything. So do you have anything you want to add, or any words of wisdom you want to impart on us before we log off?
Thanks very much for having me on your show. And as always, say, stay healthy, stay happy, and enjoy your fraternity.
Okay. Well, Ed, it has been a pleasure. Your YouTube channel is Freemasonry Report. And if you have not checked out his content, he has a lot of content. When he first started posting, or when he first came across my radar, he had like 10 videos. I was like, man, I need to watch this guy. I need to keep up with him. And then last time I checked, like you said, it's probably like close to 50 or something. So he has been hard at work putting out content. Give him a subscribe. It's worth it. You will not regret the quality content that Brother Pisani puts out. So with that said, I am going to wrap it up, and take care, brothers. If you haven't subscribed to Masonic Improvement yet, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. Take care, everybody.